But if Maduro has a plan to get away, and remember, it's not just Maduro's planning, and at this part of the Sam Faddis interview, absolutely right. There's a synergy, there's a symbiotic relationship between Cuba and Venezuela.
Did you know that?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know.
So
I didn't know Cuba had any sort of power anymore.
totally. Well, here's the thing. At the fall of the Soviet Union, Cuba was the Soviet client. Russian ships, ported their submarines, shore leave. It was like for Russians, it was a great tropical holiday, go to Cuba, right? This is like through the 80s. So the Cubans were supported by the Russians. The Russians brought in oil. The Russians exported oil to them. Remember, we've got the sanctions on them. You can't run any kind of an economy without oil. I mean, if you've got a destitute communist economy that's making no currency, right, that is not has no balance of trade anywhere, somebody's got to be bringing the oil tankers in. That was Russia. Okay, so the Soviet Union collapses, and that lifeline is cut off. Well, what happened? This is transferring at the same time with Cesar Chavez. So the in the 80s, this is as the Soviet Union support is depleting and then completely falling away, Cuba would have withered on the vine. Cuba would have had, like, we're out of oil. We can't run a bus. We can't run a tractor, nothing, because we can't buy it. We have no money. Russia was just sending tankers here to support us as a communist outpost in American Caribbean. But that was the rise of Cesar Chavez. Now, a few areas, Cuba has always punched way above its weight, as they say. Even in like a North Korea or a Cuba, you can have a hardcore of fanatics that are going to support the regime because, for a couple of reasons, they may be actual confirmed communists, but they may just be part of the nomenclatura class where they know that if, like, the regime falls, they fall with it. Like, you're Ceausescu's private army in Romania. If Ceausescu goes, you're going down too. So you're going to support, El Capo, El Caudillo. You're going to support him because he goes down, you go down. So the Cubans have always had a really good intelligence service that has, as Sam Faddis even said, run rings around the CIA. They have such deep infiltration into the United States. There are probably 20 or 30 congressmen and senators, Democrats mostly, who don't even know that they're stooges for Cuban spies. Like Swalwell with the Chinese Fang Fang, okay? There are much prettier Cuban spy chicks going back for decades and decades that they've been infiltrated into an American Cuban American economy or a Cuban American society culture, but they are Cuban spies 100%, and they are trained to seduce and all the things that Swalwell did with the Chinese spy, but much better, especially when you've got an Hispanic American community, a Cuban American community. It gives them an entire ecosystem to thrive inside of. And you've got a lot of Hispanic, especially Democrats. They don't want, they're left leaning. They don't want to hear about how terrible Cuba is. You can't tell them, look, we got to give you a briefing on these, you're going to these parties. These are like totally infiltrated by Cubans. It's like, don't tell me that, you right wingers. You supported all of the Pinochets and all them. I have some Cuban friends, screw you. Yeah, these guys are totally infiltrating at every level in our Congress business community. The Cuban spies have been super, super effective. They also, going back to when they were supporting the Soviet Union in Africa, in Ethiopia, Angola, Mozambique, they've had a very good, strong tradition of special forces troops. And as Sam Faddis and others said, Maduro's Praetorian Guard is not even Venezuelan. Maduro's Praetorian Guard is Cuban. They're Cuban special forces. So Maduro, remember, you know what Maduro was before he was like the new boss of Cuba, of Venezuela? You know what his actual job was? He was a bus driver. Okay. Maduro's a bus driver. That's his, that's his career path. Bus driver, dictator of Venezuela. So it's the Cubans that are surrounding him. So Cuba can't exist without Venezuela's oil. So Venezuela does have a limited refining capability. Cuba has very little, almost none, but it's a short drive from Venezuela to Cuba. So, so Venezuela has literally been Cuba's, IV drip in the arm. If Venezuela goes down, as Sam Faddis correctly said, if Venezuela goes down, meaning Maduro's regime is gone, the Americans are coming in, Cuba won't last a year because they won't have the backing of like Soviet oil from like 40 years ago, and they won't have the backing of Venezuelan oil. You cannot have a modern society on zero oil, zero balance of trade to buy anything. So you can't just look at Venezuela as Venezuela. It's Venezuela plus Cuban, uh, the quote unquote barefoot doctors. So a lot of what the existing health infrastructure in Venezuela is the Cubans, which also is like a huge area for uh, uh, you know double play where you have so-called doctors that are also intel agents, but you've got the special forces, the intel, the Venezuelan intelligence service is indistinguishable from the Cubans. And you've also got the Russians in there and the Chinese providing, economic support. But the support that the Russians are going to provide is in their knowledge of how to entrap Uncle Sam. The Russians are great chess players. They're in their living memory of active duty military officers. They can remember Afghanistan in the 80s when we supported Osama bin Laden. We that's when we sent Rambo 3 right into, here goes Sylvester Stallone with the brave Mujahideen killing the evil commies in Afghanistan. They don't forget that. Then everything flipped, and then we were in Afghanistan fighting the evil Mujahideen. But the Russians remember that. We supplied the Stinger missiles and other Red Eye and then Stinger missiles to shoot down Russian helicopters in Afghanistan. They haven't forgotten that. They certainly are aware that the missiles we're firing into Russia to hit refineries and the sea drones that are hitting their ships, it's 100% British American, 100%. The only Ukrainian involved is the stooge that pushes the button when he's told to push the button. It's 100% American. So if the Russians can draw us into the briar patch, the tar pit, remember, 5 times bigger than Vietnam, I don't think that the Russians are going to fire missiles. People talk about like, oh, they have hypersonics. Maybe they'll hit our aircraft carrier with a hypersonic. I don't think they're going to do that at all. But I think that they would love it if we have a nice Black Hawk Down. If we send some fighters over Venezuela, they're shot down, and now we've got American pilots on television saying, my name is John Smith, and I'm a captive of the Venezuelan people today. Then what are we going to do when we've got POWs? Or if we try to do some kind of a fast surgical op, like we're gonna send the Rangers to seize an airfield so that the C-17s can come in and C-130s can come in full of Marines. What if one of these aircraft is shot down full of paratroopers or people ready to land at an airport that it's not quite secure? We could easily have dozens, hundreds of casualties in Venezuela. All of the regular suspects on Fox News, General Jack Keane and these morons, they'll be saying, we now are at war with Venezuela. And then in 6 months, you've got Marine divisions, 82nd Airborne's in there in 2 weeks. I mean, I like a lot of Trump's spirit, but his idea of bluffing and giving ultimatums in a war strategy situation is really stupid. It might be a great thing for a Queens, New York builder to like threaten and make ultimatums. If you don't sign this contract in 2 weeks, I'm walking away. That might have worked great for Trump. But when you do that on the world stage level and you say, Maduro, you've got 1 week to surrender, or we're coming in hard and kinetic. Well, Maduro's on television basically giving the finger to the big gringo imperialist. And I'm not saying that if you took a vote in Venezuela, Maduro would win a fair vote. Not at all. But if you look in the greater context of the millions of people in Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela, there are millions that are leftists. And one thing that will rally them is the specter of the big gringo Yankee imperialist once again interfering in the Caribbean, thinking that their Marines can like sort everything out and solve all the problems by force. Even if most of the Venezuelans would welcome it, it's not going to be a cakewalk. In 1989, December 1989, so it's what, 15, 16 years ago? No, what's that? 90 to, it's
No,
a long
30,
time
30,
ago.
30,
89,
36 years ago.
Yeah, 36 years ago. So we went into Panama. Panama used to be like the lost province of Colombia, of Colombia. I mean, Panama compared to Venezuela is like Rhode Island compared to California. And we still took casualties. The dictator president of Panama at the time, he was not popular, but he did have a military that was not just going to put up a white flag when they heard Americans were coming. You're going to still have firefights. You can still have airplanes shot down. Venezuela is no Panama. So compared to Venezuela, you're like talking about Grenada. Venezuela is 5 times bigger than South Vietnam with a much bigger population. And it doesn't matter if most of the Venezuelans would support Maduro leaving. If Maduro is not captured, if we do a snatch operation, remember Black Hawk Down, what was the point of that? We're going to snatch the warlord, right? And his top warlord lieutenants. We're going to send Delta onto the roof. It's going to be a great op. Rangers will secure the blocks around there. The little birds are going to fast rope people on the roof. We're going to grab ID and his lieutenants, and we're going to be out of Somalia. It's going to be so awesome, right? Well, it didn't work. Everybody has seen that movie 5 times. It would be very possible that if we do something kinetic in Venezuela, like sending in Rangers, parachuting in to secure an airport so that the C-17s and C-130s can land with more troops, that one of those planes can get hit by a missile. We're not talking about Panama in 1989 now. We're talking about a country with modern Russian anti-aircraft missiles. So it's not going to be simple or easy. And meanwhile, the taxis, count is spinning. Every day with a carrier battle group is just millions and millions of dollars because all of the ships supporting the carrier's a nuke, but all of the ships are not. They're burning oil. They're not at the dock. They're burning oil. All those troops are getting frustrated. I was supposed to be home on leave. I missed Thanksgiving. I'm going to miss Christmas. What's this all about? Don't think that every troop, every sailor on those ships is like 100% MAGA till the end. They're not. There are plenty of Obama DEI, era hires that hate Trump and would love to have the mission fail. You can't even rule out things like sabotage.
Plus, too, though, Matt, you're going to have people that just aren't buying into this. I mean, I can tell you, I'm not buying into this. I don't know how this benefits me, a regular American in Arizona, by if, and this is a big if. I mean, there's a lot of talk, and then it never comes to fruition. But if it does, how do everyday Americans benefit from this?
Well,